Hello, my name is Catherine, and I am one of the 3 full-time professional tutors here at RimCAD at the SLC. I specialize in anything related to your interior design classes, anything from drafting to learning Revit, all the way to making that final senior portfolio. We will be going over linking a CAD file, linking and importing a JPEG or an image and those differences, linking another Revit file, an existing Revit file, and copy and pasting a component from another Revit file. I have started a new project just like you would any other project using the default template Revit gives you. I have gone ahead and deleted a few things off of this page. Start with a kind of a clean slate and get all the stuff out of the way that I don't need that, is kind of visual overload. Mine might look a little bit different than yours, but that's why. So now we're going to go over how to link and import specific files. There is an important difference between linking and importing something. And you'll notice that we have options to link Revit, link CAD, link a PDF or an image. And then we also have the ability to import CAD, import PDF, import an image, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I am going to link a CAD project. Let's say in the real world, right, we're working at a firm and someone else is working in that AutoCAD file still, and there might be changes that are being made. Those changes are going to update in your Revit file while you're drawing because you're using the linked version of the CAD file. And you'll notice this warning pop up that says that we can't see it in this view. Now, that does not mean that it does not exist. It means that it got placed somewhere in this draw area, so we need to find it first. Oftentimes, students don't understand what that means, and so they'll do it again, and so they have several copies of something in their project, and you want to be really careful not to do that, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and I have a sneaking suspicion that it's out here somewhere, and it surely is. So I'm going to grab that and unpin it, and I'm just going to pull it into kind of my work area here. And I'm going to actually leave these crops open because as you can see, this file page is quite large. And to be able to do certain things, I'm going to need to pull on the CAD file correctly. And so you can see it goes all the way out here because of this weird thing that I was drawing for whatever reason. However, we would typically clean stuff like that before we were to put it in Revit, but it's a good thing to know that this problem does exist and to prep yourself before putting things in Revit, okay? So I'm going to zoom in and I want to center it in between my exterior elevation markers. And I'm only going to use this building, so I don't need this other stuff on the sides. So eventually we'll crop that, this visually less stimulating, and be able to zero in on the thing we need. However, first we need to make sure that it is to scale. And now I'm sure there is a better way to do this. However, I don't know what it is. So I have always just used the detail lines to measure a door that I know is 3 feet. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this one is actually 3 feet and a 16th. If we're off a 16th of an inch, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you want to be pretty careful. So then I am going to take this project, and do you see how I can't actually scale it? Normally an image, a JPEG of something would allow me to have the little buttons, the little blue dots at the corners to be able to scale it. However, because this is a CAD project, I can't do that. The dimension I'm getting is in fact the same. And so that's because it's a CAD file. So it links all of those correct measurements. Okay, and so I can go ahead and erase those detail lines. And so we know that this is to scale. So remember, when you crop, you always want to have those elevation markers still in the floor plan views. So they're close to the edge of the project, but not touching any other information. So I'm just going to crop that nice and tight so that I don't have all this other information in my view. And so then now I can go to my walls and I'm going to choose an exterior, click on CMU, and just start drawing around this. Now it looks like this project has curtain walls all the way around it, but for the sake of this demonstration, I am going to just do regular walls. Okay. And so when we do this, we can see that our walls are actually quite wider than the original ones from this project. When that is true, we want to go with what is code. And so make sure that you know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to line this up so that my exterior wall hits that interior side of the wall. And so I am not taking over any square footage using a different wall type. It's just sticking out farther than it would normally. Our interior square footage is the more important part, so we don't want to make that incorrect because we're using a larger wall. So I line it up with those interior lines. I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So now we've got a basic shell. So now what I'm going to do is actually hide this CAD drawing. And so then the next thing would be is that I want to make sure that these are the heights that I know them to be. So this CAD file will be visible in any view you open, and so you can always hide it in the views that you don't need to see it, okay? So now we're going to go back up to Insert, and this time we are going to go and link an image. Now, I'm not going to go through every single option. However, I just want you to notice a few differences. So again, linking a project makes it so that if there are changes made to this image, then they would update in Revit. With an image, that's less likely to be needed, and so then we would import it. But I am going to go ahead and lay that down, and this one is obviously bigger than the crops that I've given myself. This now has the buttons or the blue dots on the side that I can scale this, okay? And so we don't have dimensions on this project like we did that CAD project. So I am going to go to a door that I know is ADA, so 3 feet, women's bathroom, and just do my best. I'm going to use a detail line, and I'm just going to draw where the door starts and ends. And look at that. That was actually pretty amazing. It is actually 3 feet. I've never done that before in my life. Okay, of course I do it on an example that I don't want it to be 3 feet. So let's back up here, okay, and I'm going to make it bigger, and then I'm going to measure that door again. So this is just so that I can illustrate my point. So now, right now, our dimension is actually 5 feet 10. So I'm going to make it 3 feet, and then I know that I need to scale this drawing way down. So I'm going to do this and then move it so that it's in the area of my little door drawing there. And then I'm just going to keep scaling it down. So I'm going to call that good, okay? And so now I know that this is more or less to scale, but it's hard to tell. This also is an older building. It's a historical building. And so things like stairs and doors might not actually be to the same ADA standards that we now have, right? So you have to be careful of that as well. So now that we know it's scaled, I need to put it in between these elevation markers, and then I'm just going to scooch them away from the project because you don't want this stuff to overlap. So now I can crop it, and then we don't have all that extra empty space, and it's going to fit on a sheet rather nicely. So I tend to do this type of stuff in the moment, step by step, rather than having to try and do it all at the end when I'm putting, maybe stressed out to get the project done and get it on sheets. I'm not having to clean it all up at that point. Now what I'm going to do is start drawing on top of this, and I'm going to use an exterior wall, brick on CMU, and I always start at the top left-hand corner and draw clockwise. This ensures that the exterior side of the wall is in fact on the exterior side of the building, and then I don't have to flip them after. And notice that I'm not being super careful to be on any specific line. I just drew the box. So now what I want to do is these walls, which are actually, I think, at 1.7 inches, I think a wall only needs to be about 1 foot thick for the exterior, but that will depend on your job, fire safety, structure, all of those things. The important part is that I want to make sure that my line hits the interior side of the wall, and then we have all this extra space here, but that's okay. It's on the outside, which we don't really care about. We do not want to alter the square footage of our project, right? So that's why I am nudging it to the interior side of the wall. And so this is harder to see, but I'm using this gray line and that I think is windows. These are probably columns. So I'm lining it up to that gray line. And so now we can see our 4 walls in the 3D view. Also, when imported, we can just hide these in whatever views we don't want to see them in. Then, let's say at some point you do want to just get rid of that drawing. It doesn't need to be there anymore, so you can actually go to the Manage tab, and there is a Manage Links option. So we have the original codes one that we were using, which is linked, and then the new floor plan that is also linked. This will slow down your Revit. So when you start to put more and more things in this project and you're materializing and all of those things, you'll want to get rid of these links because it will slow down your computer. So now let's say we've got this project, the exterior walls in. However, this project is getting renovated, so a lot of those interior walls that existed are being demoed and new construction is being done. And so someone put that in a Revit file already for us. And so you can also link a Revit file. This is an active Revit file, and it's got a lot more information in it, as you can see, than I do have in mine. So theoretically, this also should be the same size. It does not need to be scaled. However, I do need to center it a little bit, it looks like. We can also see that their walls are maybe a little bit smaller than mine. And so depending on the purposes of using this file, you might want to make changes to yours, or your changes are the new ones, just depends. Can't actually click on individual components of a linked or imported Revit file. We're using it purely just to trace. Now, let's say we wanted to bring in a component that we made. Obviously when we make a component, it acts as a Revit default library would act, or something that we get off of one of those free websites. However, let's say that we modeled in place inside of a project, and now that component only lives in that project, and so we can't bring it in as a component. So what I would do, select in the open project that I have, and now I'm going to copy to clipboard, and then I can come over here to my drawing, and I'm actually going to open a ceiling plan. And then I can paste selected levels, and so I'm going to choose level 1 and say OK. And so as you can see, it gives you some information. It's fine. So I'm not going to worry about that warning, but it just kind of plopped down wherever it wanted to. It didn't know, obviously where you want to put it. So then I can move it around. As you can see, there are lots of different ways to bring in components, different scenarios as to why you would do it a certain way. And sometimes you will have to just explore, and you're going to have to play with different scenarios to see which one is better. There is not just one clear answer for how we do something in Revit. All right, so thank you for watching the video. I hope that it was helpful and that you can continue on with your assignment with success. If not, feel free to reach out to myself or anyone here in the Learning Commons. Good luck.